name is Carmen Chu, San Francisco assessor. I wanted to share a video with you that speaks about some of the changes that you might expect to have happen as a result of the passage of Proposition 19. Many people have been reaching out to our office to try to better understand what this would mean to their family. And so we really wanted to put together some information to help you not only understand the changes that will come about because of Proposition 19, but also have some information to help you plan for the future. So I'm going to be sharing a PowerPoint presentation with you. Bear with me as I start to set that up. So hopefully you can all see this, and I'm going to start advancing through the slides. First and foremost, we need to make sure that you know that our office cannot provide legal advice to you. For many individuals, some of the decisions you're going to have to make with regards to estate planning or the purchase or sale of additional properties is a very personal decision, and oftentimes everyone has a very unique circumstance that you operate under. So we definitely recommend that if you're going to make any changes, whether it's purchasing a new property, selling a property, or transferring properties to others, that you do seek legal advice or you talk to an accountant or another estate planning professional who can really help you really understand what the impacts of what your actions would mean for you. And so I'm going to go forward and share with you more about the basics. So as you may know, in November of 2020, the state voters passed by a margin of about 400,000 votes, something called Proposition 19. It's called the Home Protection for Seniors, Severely Disabled, Families and Victims of Wildfire or Natural Disaster Act. Passed in November of 2020, the law was certified by the Secretary of State in December, and it very quickly is going to go into effect. There are really just two pieces of the legislation or two main components of the legislation that go into effect on different days. The first part goes into effect February 16th, and it has to do with transfers between parents and children, or perhaps from grandparents to grandchildren. The second piece of the law is a law that will impact senior transfers. And so we're going to speak more about that in this particular session. We do have another video that speaks to the parent-to-child transfer, but we will be focusing on the April 1st effective date for this new proposition section. The one other thing I will mention before I advance is that one of the things you should know is that the voter language had some pieces that were perhaps missing or needed clarification in terms of how assessors across the state of California would implement this law. Just know that we might be hearing more from the state legislature, either through legislation or through the State Board of Equalization, on exactly how we need to interpret some of the rules and how it is that we should administer the changes that Proposition 19 would bring about. So just know that there's still a bit of unknown that we have in terms of how we would implement this because of such a quick timeline. But just to know that we will be monitoring and keeping a close eye on any of those rules that come forward. So to start off with, one of the things that's really important to know is how property taxes work generally. So this is really important basic information to know so that you can understand what the changes or what Prop 19 impact will be. So we're going to get started with really just answering the question about how property taxes are calculated and what happens when there has been a change in ownership for a particular property. One thing to know is that, of course, property taxes in California are governed by state law, in particular, state revenue and tax code, and also the state constitution. There are 58 counties in the state of California with one elected assessor in each one of those counties. And all of those counties have to follow the same rules when it comes to property taxes. Generally, we will be setting a property tax or your taxable value for a particular home, and that taxable value is multiplied by a tax rate, roughly 1%. It varies from county to county, and you get what is your tax for the annual bill. And so, for example, if your home is at a taxable value of $500,000, you multiply that by 1%, and you get an annual bill of $5,000. For many people who do have property in California, you know that you receive your bill roughly in October, and you're able to pay that bill in 2 installments due in December and due in April. And so many people ask, well, how do you set that taxable value, or what we call the assessed value? The way that we set it is that the law requires that we take a look at the market value of your home, or what the property that you've purchased as of the date that you become the owner. And so we would typically take the sales price of a home, but it may not always be the sales price. There are instances where maybe a family member decides to sell it at a below market price to a family member just to help them out. And so, as a job of the assessor, it is really to take a look at what is the market value of a home at the time that you become owner. We will set that as your taxable value. And every year thereafter, it can't increase by more than 2% per Proposition 13 of the state of California's codes. Now, just know we're going to walk through an example so you can see exactly what I mean, but we're going to walk through a situation where maybe perhaps a couple purchased a home back in 1990 for a purchase price and the market price of $100,000. Taking a look at this, you see that there is a blue line at the very bottom. Again, that property was purchased back in 1990 for $100,000. Over time, we can't increase that taxable value by more than 2% a year. So you fast forward to 2020, and what you'll see is that the taxable value in 2020 will be $185,000. So it's a very low taxable value when you compare it perhaps to the market value. You also see a red line on this graph that shows you what possibly could have happened during that same period of time to market values of homes. We've seen this in the state of California, where home prices have really skyrocketed compared to where your taxable value or Prop 13 protected value might have been. So in the same situation, say for example, that very same home, even though we're taxing it in 2020 at 185,000, it's possible that the market value of that home is $1.5 million by the time that it's progressed that many years, 30 years into the future. So just remember that under Prop 13, you're paying taxes at the lower taxable value of 185,000 versus the $1.5 million. So you can see that, of course, the benefit to having a Prop 13 protected value is significant, especially when you've owned property for a very long period of time. Now, people often ask, when is it that the assessor's office will reassess or trigger an increase in the property taxes? Typically, we would take a look at reassessment when two things have happened. One, when there's been a change in ownership, and two, when there's been a change in ownership. For new construction, you can just imagine if people have added, say, an additional bedroom or additional bathrooms to their home, we wouldn't reassess the entire house. However, we would add the new market value of what has changed. So that's something important to know for new owner or new construction work. Separately, if you're able to have a property that is purchased by someone else, where there's been a change in who owns it, that's also a time in which we would reset the taxable value to a market value. So in that same example, just showing you graphically what that means, that same property that was purchased back in 1990, fast forward to 2000, remember that it was being taxed for the original owners at 185,000. Let's just say that in 2020, they end up selling it to a new family. Well, that family would see a reassessment so that instead of paying taxes at that 185,000 that the previous owners were paying at, they actually have to be paying taxes at that $1.5 million market value of that home, because that was the market value as of the time that they became owners of the home. And so when you take a look at what that could mean for individuals, it can mean quite a big impact. For the property owner that was paying property taxes at 185,000, their taxes annually is 1,850 roughly. For that same house, if it was reassessed to market value at 1.5 million, they'd be paying taxes at 15,000 a year. So a pretty significant difference when it comes to annual taxes that you would pay. And so how would the law treat base year value transfers for seniors and disabled individuals? And so what I want to share with you is how the current law works, and then I will go and share with you what the Prop 19 changes will look like. So under current law, there is a program that helps individuals who are seniors or disabled who want to buy a replacement property. It allows for that senior or for that disabled individual to be able to carry over that lower Prop 13 value to a new home. But there are certain conditions that have to be met. First and foremost, the individual has to be 55 years or older, or they have to meet the state's definition of who qualifies under the disabled category. The second condition is that for the most part, if you are transferring or buying a replacement property in your own home, or not, sorry, in your own county, it would apply. But if you wanted to transfer it to a replacement home that is outside of your county, there are only certain counties that will accept an intercounty transfer. So just know that typically, let's just say in San Francisco, if you were a senior and you met all of the eligibility criteria, we would allow you to transfer your base year value within San Francisco. However, if you wanted to take your base year and buy a home in, say, Alameda County, or you wanted to buy it in Riverside County or somewhere else, we would have to check, they would have to check whether or not your property is eligible for an intercounty transfer. So it's not necessarily portable between different counties. The third thing is that the replacement property actually has to have a market value that is equal than or lesser than the market value of your existing home. And then finally, you can only access this benefit one time in a lifetime. And so what happens after April 1st when Prop 19 goes into effect? Well, primarily the big takeaway is that there is an expansion of benefits that are available to individuals under Prop 19. So here's how this would change. For eligibility, remember we said 55 and older or a disabled per the state's definition. Well, in addition to that, they've also expanded the people who are eligible to include victims of wildfire and natural disaster. In addition to that, instead of having portability be sometimes available between counties, what the law will do now is say that it doesn't matter where you're buying your replacement property in the state of California, you can transfer it there. So this is something that will make it easier for people to transfer to different counties, potentially if they're looking for replacement properties elsewhere. The third thing is that, remember before where the market value of the replacement home had to be equal to or less than the market value of your existing home. If you didn't meet that criteria, you get no benefit at all. But in this case, under Prop 19, they actually allow for you to buy a replacement home, even if it's at a higher market value than what your current property's market value is. There is a formula. We're going to go through that in just a little bit, but just know that there's no longer a value restriction that used to exist or that currently exists. And then finally, instead of only having the ability to do this one time in a lifetime, you're able to do this 3 times in a lifetime. So let's just walk through an example of what that could look like. So let's just say we have a homeowner who meets the criteria, is over 55 years old. They sell their primary residence for $1 million. So the market value of their home is $1 million. But at the time of the sale, the taxed value, taxable or assessed value, is at $500,000. Let's just say the individual buys a replacement home at a level of $900,000. What would we be taxing that new home at? Well, because the market value of the new home is actually less than the market value of the home that they're leaving, we're actually going to keep the taxed value at what it was before, at $500,000. So they purchased a new home, they became a new homeowner, and normally you would have a reassessment to market value at that time. But because you qualify for this program, you would be able to transfer that $500,000 taxable value to this new replacement home, even though it's worth $900,000. So let's walk through a scenario where instead of having the market value of the replacement home being less than the market value of your current home, it's actually at a higher level. So in this case, your current value, the market value of your current home is $1 million. You're being taxed at a level of $500,000 for your current home, but your replacement property is worth $1.2 million. So in this case, this is the calculation we would typically do. We would basically take a look at the market value of the replacement home, 1.2 million, subtract out the market value of your current or existing home, the home that you're leaving, and you get a difference in this case of 200,000. We would add that value on top of your current assessed value. So we take the and add it to 500,000 to get you a level of $700,000. So in this situation, the $1.2 million home that you purchase as a replacement won't be taxed at that level, but you will be taxed instead at a $700,000 level. So that would represent a tax savings for you. Instead of paying property taxes at roughly $12,000 a year, you'd be paying property taxes at $7,000. It's still slightly higher than what you were paying before, but not the full amount as if you were taking a look at the market value of that new residence at 1.2. So that is just all to say that that's typically how we would view the law as it speaks now. There are going to be many, many changes potentially that will come down the line or additional rules that clarify how this program works. And we're going to be looking forward to making sure we track that. There is a state website, www.boe.ca.gov. It's the website to the State Board of Equalization, whose job it is to equalize or to make as consistently administered across the state, all of the property tax laws in California. So we definitely encourage you to stay tuned to your local assessor's office, but also to the State Board of Equalization to further understand how Prop 19 will be administered or implemented when the time comes. I hope that this information has been helpful for you. We know that the changes to your home or buying or selling a home is a big decision, and we hope that this information helps you understand a little bit more about the changes that are upcoming so that you can make your decisions as well informed as possible. Take care, everybody, and please stay safe.